All right, so let's go ahead then. We're going to cover the material from chapter 1. I want to get you introduced to the idea of a macro. So go ahead and open up Excel. And, oh, we're not quite there yet. We're so close, but we're not quite there yet. Let's come back to Learning Suite on the schedule. And can't quite get to my Learning Suite schedule. It's hiding. Oh, here it is. DreamSpark. So to do this class, you're going to need to have the Windows version of Excel. You might be able to do 2/3 of what we do in class on the Mac version. But I'm going to just assume that you have the Windows version. You won't be able to do your homework unless you have the Windows version of Excel. So there's some good news here. One is that, well, I'm not sure there's any good news there, but I can help you. You get Excel, the Windows version of Excel for free, right? That's part of your BYU, being a student at BYU. You get like 5 installations of Microsoft Office, and so you can put one on Windows. I can get you Windows at no charge because my department pays a bunch of money to Microsoft every year to be able to give certain software to anyone who's signed up for the class. So that's what this link is here. This I don't think it's called DreamSpark anymore, Imagine or something, but if you follow this link, then you give me your name, your net ID, your email address, and then I will get you signed up to where you can download. It's a bunch of Windows, Microsoft software for free. Most of it's development kinds of stuff, database management and programming languages and such. But also you get Windows. So then you'll also need, if you have a Mac, you'll need to be able to install Windows and Office on your Mac. And there are several ways to do that. Parallels is the way most students do. It costs $40. There's a link to that. I wonder if that's still a valid link. Fusion, a little more expensive. I don't think it's twice as expensive or twice as good. But it seems like Parallels, they make you upgrade every year or something. So this ends up being a little more expensive than you think. My favorite one here is VirtualBox. It's free. You can run into a little bit of hiccups when you're installing it, but the TAs and I can help you get past that. It's the one that I use when I need to virtualize something on the Mac. So if you're wondering about how you're going to get that installed on your machine, and this seems mystical to you, come and see me and I'll help you through the process. Okay. So I'm going to have a blank workbook open here in Excel. And I'm going to come to my developer tab. I got all these tabs up here. I got File, Home, Insert Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, View, Help. Where's my developer tab? It turns out that when you just install Excel, the developer tab, which is all the stuff you need for doing VBA, is not available. It's not because you have a deficient version of Excel. It's because the folks in Redmond, Washington thought, you know what? There is so much raw power available in VBA. We don't want mere mortals to have access to it. And if you can't figure out how to show the developer tab, you don't have a ticket to watch the show. I mean, that's their philosophy. And it's not hard. I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Here's how you do it. File, Options, Customize Ribbon. File, Options, Customize Ribbon. And here's all the ribbons. Here's all the tabs on the ribbon. The developer one just isn't checked. You're going to put a check mark there and then say OK. By the way, I'm not sure why you would ever do this, but you would uncheck the Home menu. That Home menu just clutters up. I don't need that stuff. Printing, saving, all that stuff. We don't need that stuff. We don't get rid of it. Maybe if your roommate, he walked away from his computer, left it open, you can go take rid of the Home tab. No, that would be a sin. You'd have to repent from that. But then again, I do encourage repentance, so I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so that gets the developer tab. Now, if you're on Mac and you don't have Windows installed, I think it's like Excel preferences. How many of you are going, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to do anything today because I don't have the Windows version? I'm going to see if I can talk you through it. So you're going to let me know if this works. So I think you've got a menu right up here, not in the ribbon, but you actually have a menu option at the very top. And there's one that says Excel. Is that right? So you have ribbon, and then you have another menu at the very top, the one second cell, and click on that menu, and then there's something that says like preferences. Choose preferences. Oh, good. But you got a menu that I can get to easily. So, folks, so preferences, and then is there a place there that says customize ribbon? How did you get to it?
Ribbon and toolbar.
Then there's a button called ribbon and toolbar, and then that looks the same. So it's the Excel menu at the very top, preferences, ribbon and toolbar, and then go check the developer ribbon. All right, so now we have the stuff that it takes to be able to do, I gotta find out how to move this menu, which you can't see. Okay. So here's the idea. First, we gotta set the Wayback Machine to kind of understand how we got to where we are now. In the 1970s, oh my gosh, the 1970s, there was when we really have the introduction of the thing called a personal computer. Businesses in the 1970s looked at this personal computer and they said, you know what, that personal computer, we can't use anything. That personal computer is just worthless. You know, maybe someone at home is going to use it, but we're not going to use it here at work. And in fact, most personal computers in the 1970s would hook up to a television. You know, so they don't have their own dedicated monitor. You'd get, you know, a little box and you'd plug it into the television to be able to see things. Wasn't very good. And then Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak came out with this Apple, really kind of an amazing small computer. And then there was some software that was written for the Apple called VisiCalc. And VisiCalc was really the first electronic spreadsheet. And it wasn't initially written for the Apple. It was written for the mini computer environment. Mini computers are really quite large by today's standards. You know, the size of this podium would be a mini computer in the day. But the software got ported over to Apple to work on the Apple computer. And it was really the combination of the Apple II and VisiCalc's successor called SuperCalc that made businesses for the first time say, you know, this personal computer might be useful. We could see uses for this. You know, we give a personal computer and SuperCalc, and we could do budgets. A guy could totally do budgets on this thing. This looks pretty good. That's really what got businesses involved in the personal computer. It was the idea of a spreadsheet. What could SuperCalc do? It had rows, it had columns. You could put a formula in a cell that referenced antecedent cells. That was it. And that was all it took for us to go, whoa, this was amazing. We can change this assumption in the model and all the calculations automatically update. You know, you take this stuff for granted, but in the 1970s, that was big news. And so very, very quickly, personal computers, you know, for sure within 10 years, personal computers are now pervasive in the business, and so is spreadsheet software. It becomes apparent pretty quickly that we're doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, at the end of the month, we got to do the same thing. It's exactly the same keystroke. This is before there's a mouse. Was there a mouse on the Apple II? You don't know this. There wasn't. There was no mouse. We don't really get the mouse in the world of Apple until the Macintosh computer. And so everything is done by keystrokes on the keyboard. And we realized we were typing exactly the same keystrokes. You know, oh, it's the end of the month. I'm going to type this key and that key. It's exactly the same. And so the very first macros, all they were a record of keystrokes. And so, in fact, what you would do, you'd pick a cell. This cell right here, I'm going to record a macro. And you would go cell after cell, just record keystrokes. And then later, you'd make that the active cell. And you say, I want to play that macro. And it would just go and send the keystrokes back in. It would do exactly the same thing. That's what macros used to be. And that went pretty well until the mouse came around. Now the mouse is, how are you going to record? There's no keystrokes with the mouse. How are you going to record it? You know, and can you actually? And so it was 1995. How old were you? Nick, I'm going to pick on you. You're from San Diego. I was raised in San Diego. But how old were you in 1995? If you don't mind saying. I was 2 years old. When Nick was 2, Microsoft said we're going to change the way that we record a macro. And now, instead of recording keystrokes, we're going to record what you're doing in a computer language. We're actually going to write a computer program of the things that do the things you just did. Does anyone know the name of the language that they first used in 1995? No, BASIC's close. Visual Basic for Applications, VBA. It's exactly the same language that we're learning today. If you would have told me in 1995 when I first used VBA, and I was kind of an early adopter of it, that I would still be using it and teaching it in the year 2020, I would have thought that's absolutely absurd. You might get 4 or 5 years out of a language before you have to scrap it and retool. But Microsoft has not changed the language. They've updated it a little bit, made it a little bit more powerful, but it's the same language. So interesting thing about this language is it's had kind of this amazing longevity. Microsoft would probably like to get rid of VBA, but they just can't. Why not? They have a huge installed base. And one of the things that keeps people using Excel instead of what's another competitor they might use? Google Sheets, maybe, what'd you call it? LibreOffice. Yeah. So there's some other kind of compelling options out there. OpenOffice is the way that I think of it. It's the same code base. Is, what? All this stuff that we have written in our company that runs in VBA, we'd have to scrap it and write it again if we move to a different platform. And so it is here for the long haul. Okay, so that's the idea, is that what we're going to do is we're going to say, listen, we want to record ourselves doing something, and then we're going to see the code that it generates. So follow along with me, and we're going to record our first macro. So I'm going to come to the Developer tab. I'll select the Developer tab. And I now have this button right here called Record Macro. We're going to, next time we get together, we're going to actually, in a couple of times, latter half of next week, we will do some more sophisticated stuff with recording a macro. But for right now, just kind of follow along with me. I'm going to click on Record Macro. What do you want to call the macro? I'm just going to leave this the way it is, Macro 1. That's fine. It's really not a very good name, but we'll leave it. We'll talk about a shortcut key. Well, let's go ahead and put a shortcut key on it. Let's go ahead and put Control M for macro. That's great. This is our macro. Control M. By the way, they're like different control keys. They do different things, right? Control P, prints, and everything. There's only one keystroke that's not already mapped for control in Excel. It's Control M. Everything else means something else. Go ahead. Can I make it bigger? That was kind of the whole point of me using the podium computer, is that it's so huge up here, but then I didn't really think about the resolution. The answer is yes, I can, even though I don't really want to. Come back. That's too big. Okay, maybe one more down. Nope. There we go. All right. Now, I got different choices about where I'm going to store this. Let's just put it in this workbook. We'll talk about what the different options are later in life. By later in life, I mean next week. And description, first macro. By the way, where does the word macro come from? It means small, but not that small. I'm not sure where it comes from. I've said it so often now, it seems like a normal thing to say, but that's what it is. We'll say, okay. All right, so now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on, I already have A1 selected, but I want to actually record that I'm actually going to A1, so let me click off of A1 and go back to A1. If I don't actually make the activity of going to A1, it's just going to, it won't really know that I'm going to A1. It'll just be wherever you are. Oh, actually, probably for what we're doing here, it'll be all right. So I'm just going to, I'm going to say I've got some kind of table I need to build frequently, and I would just like to kind of get the table going to start off with. So maybe I'm going to put just a pound sign here, hit tab to go to the next field. I'm going to put client ID, date, time, duration, I don't know. And then maybe I'll go ahead and highlight this whole range, and I'll make that bold. Control B, I can't remember how to do it. Maybe it's on the home. Here we go. Oh yeah, there's bold. And then maybe I'll put, make the header a little bit different color in the background, kind of a light blue. I'll select A2, and that's it. I just want to have those activities that I just did. I want to make a macro that does those, so I can invoke that macro and it will just do that. I got to remember to stop recording. So I'm going to come back to my developer tab and I'm going to say stop recording. Okay, that's my first macro. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to come way to the bottom. I'm going to make a new sheet, and I've got several ways that I can invoke that macro. One that I set up was Control M. So now I should be able to press Control M, and it should just rerun those steps. And so here I am now on sheet number 2. I pressed Control M, and it put these, formatted the sheet the way that I had it formatted. I want to look at a couple other ways that we can invoke that macro. One, even if the developer tab is not available, if I come to the View tab, all the way at the right, I have a list of macros. And so I can drop that list down, and I can say View Macros, and I can run that macro. And it should do those, put that information right back in there. I have the same button also on my developer tab. I can come here to say macros here. And here's my list of macros, and then I can run it. Or I can edit. That's what we're going to do. So we're about to edit this. Now, before you press edit, I just want to make sure that you're all seated, because it will be a little bit shocking what happens here, because Excel is going to look different than you have ever seen it look before. Edit. And now this doesn't look like Excel at all. In fact, we did that in class one time, and there was a young lady sitting on the front row who let out an audible gasp when that happened. An audible gasp. Okay, but don't worry, this is just another window. So your Visual Basic for Applications editor is just sitting in front of your normal Excel. So now here we have that macro. So let's take a look. Oh, you know what? In this code, I can make bigger. We're gonna live in this window for most of this class. So I'm just gonna make the text a little bit bigger. Editor format. Let's do this. This is a really great scroll bar. Look at the scroll bar here. There's actually no bar to it. I want Microsoft Sans Serif. Cyrillic. Should we type in Cyrillic? Do Western. Microsoft Sans Serif Western. There we go. And we'll make it like 20 points. You don't need to make that change. That's just so you can see this. Now, hopefully, I can kind of go out of this zoom mode. And you should be able to see most of this other stuff you won't see so well. That's OK. The code is what we're going to want to look at here. Forgot who asked me to zoom in, but are you good? We're OK. All right. So the first thing to realize when you have this macro is that there's this structure. It says it begins with the keyword sub. It ends with the keyword end sub. That is then the set that we're running together, a set of instructions that we're going to invoke by that name or by that keyboard shortcut. By the way, everything that we see here, so here's the name. This is the name that we've kind of named this set of statements. And then all these next lines that are green that start with a single quote, that's actually called the comment character. It just says, hey, this is a note. It's not, the interpreter, the program that tries to figure out what to do here, ignores this stuff. It's for some human to read. I love this one. Sub macro, or macro 1, and it says this is the macro 1 macro. In case you missed it, 2 lines above, where the one intervening line is blank, that's what it is. The note here that we gave, that's the note that we typed in when we recorded it. And then it tells me, hey, when this is recorded, there was a keyboard shortcut bound to it. All right, now here is the actual work that we just did. So this, hopefully, we can kind of look at that, and knowing what we just did, we should be able to look at this and say, okay, I think I get it. So someone tell me what this line is doing. Take a stab, a shot in the dark. Go ahead. Yeah, it's just selecting that A1 cell, but this is the format of the language. Typically what we do is we say we're going to identify something. In this case, this expression I have highlighted identifies a thing. Technically, VBA is what we call an object-based language. Some people say, you know what, it really is an object-oriented language. In the 1980s, when I was a student here, I took a class called Object-Oriented Programming. We learned a language called C++. It was a great moment. It was kind of the hype of the 1980s. It was object-oriented programming. The world was switching to this new paradigm for computer programming. And I had a sudden realization in that class. It was about 2/3 of the way through the class when I realized I still had no idea what an object was. 2/3 of the way through a class on object-oriented programming, I didn't know what an object was. Well, you're in luck. I'm going to tell you what an object is. Today, it's first day of class. Objects are going to be foundational to everything we do in VBA. You got to know what an object is. Are you ready? An object is a thing. That's it. It's a thing. Why don't they call it thing-oriented programming? It doesn't really flow off the lips. Thing-oriented programming. I don't know. Specifically, it's anything that we can manipulate through code in VBA. So Here, range A1. Can we do stuff with A1 through code? Yeah. In fact, almost everything you look at over here in the workbook is an object. What do you think? Is this cell an object? Yeah, any cell is an object. How about this column, an object? Yes. How about this row, an object? Yes. How about the worksheet, this whole worksheet, is that an object? Yes. How about the workbook itself? Object? Yes. How about the whole Excel application? Object? Yes. Okay, it really, here's one thing that's not an object. That gray line that's between the cells, not an object. But if I were to actually put a line in like that line right there, that's an object. But the gray lines that are like individual there, those aren't objects. But everything else is not. How about if you made a shape, like put a square on the page? Object? Yeah. How about a chart? Object? Yeah. How about the axis of a chart? Object? Yes. How about the trend line of a chart? Object? Yes. They're all objects. So we're going to work with objects. So you're going to say in your mind thing. Now, objects have a couple of characteristics that are important to us. One is right here. This is called a method. So what a method is something that the object knows how to do. So range A1 knows how to do some stuff. Range A1 knows how to do a bunch of stuff. It has lots of methods, lots of activity that it knows how to do. And I'm literally just telling range A1, I'm saying range A1, go select yourself. The important thing here is that there's not some select algorithm that I am arbitrarily applying to A1. No, no, no. Range A1 has built into it. It knows how to make itself active. And so when I call a method of an object, some activity of that object, I'm telling that object to do something that it knows how to do. I can't just pick any old object and say that object.select. I can't select, well, most objects you can select. I think of an object you can't select. You don't necessarily, there are other methods that you can't just apply. But the point is that the object has been designed by someone. So this object is going to know how to do some stuff. And one of the things it can do is select. So that's what we're doing. Okay, great. So now let's look at the next line. Active cell. What cell do you think, well, first of all, active cell is going to refer to an object. What object is it going to refer to? Why A1? Yeah, because just moments ago, we made it active. And so now when we say whatever cell is active, we're going to refer to now a property. So these are the two most important characteristics of objects we're going to deal with. You'll be so comfortable with methods and properties. By the third week of this course, you'll be thinking, wow, this stuff's really easy. So objects have methods, instructions they know how to do, and they have properties, characteristics about how they are. So what we're doing is we are changing the formula. It's actually a formula R1C1. Be nice, it was just a formula. There's a formula property, by the way. And we'll get familiar with this one a little bit later in class. But we're not telling it to do something. What we're saying is, object, I want to change something about the way you are. I'm not changing your value, although the value will be different as a result. I'm changing the formula of that cell. And so this is what we call an assignment statement. I take whatever is in the right, I put it into whatever is in the left. I am changing a property, a descriptor of that object. I'm changing something about the way the object is. That's our introduction to working with VBA. We recorded a macro. We are seeing objects, methods, and properties. Chapters 1 and 3, in case you're taking notes. And we will pick up with, I think, variables next time we get together next Monday. Thank you for coming. Class dismissed. Feel free to applaud. That's great. Yeah. Stand by for just a minute while I figure out how to stop recording.